Well, not even out of our sight. But anyway, he got the call, and NBC wanted to interview Ken and me on Monday night, live for NBC Nightly News. Now, the problem is that some bright person, some booker, some producer hadn't realized that we're in New Mexico, that we had to get from New Mexico to Washington, D.C. They obviously thought that Ken Johnson, NASA, may be still in Washington, because that's, of course, where they think NASA is. That's where headquarters is. So they didn't plan ahead, and so we literally were at 38,000 feet, somewhere over Tennessee, when NBC wanted us to appear. However, the Russians did turn out. As Robin said, 4 television networks, including the Russian equivalent of CNN, showed up. And they interviewed us in this wonderful area with all the flags. Here's some of the logos for the official Russian networks. And I am strongly suspecting that the guy behind all this is this guy, Vladimir Putin, the current president of Russia. Because Russia, even though it is technically a democracy, it still is pretty much the top guys running the show. And when state television, state Russian television showed up to basically film us and record us and talk to us for hours and hours. We did, for instance, for the Russian equivalent of CNN, we went back to their studio, which is down on K Street, and we spent 3 hours being interviewed in the Washington Bureau of the equivalent of CNN. They call it Russia Today. And we were told that they're going to edit this 3-hour interview down to about 25 or 30 minutes between Ken and me. They asked for a data dump of all of the images of the lunar ruins that I'm going to be showing you this afternoon. So we gave them a nice digital transfer, including files that are 15 megs in size, so they could have fun and games and Zooms and all that. And they told us that this is going to run after the current space shuttle comes down, the Discovery mission, for roughly once each hour, 12 times during the day when the shuttle returns to Earth. That's an amazing amount of Russian network television airtime. I mean, a 25 or 30-minute piece on American television is unheard of. You know, Americans have the attention span of your average mayfly. And so, you know, producers get nervous if the piece goes more than 30 seconds or a minute 30 or something like that. To actually use a 30-minute cut produced interview with photographs, with B-roll, and run it 12 times over a 24-hour period, once each hour, is, I mean, if that comes to pass, that will be phenomenal. And there is only one reason I think that is going to come to pass, and it's because of this man. So then the question becomes, geopolitical question, is what does he know about what Khrushchev and Kennedy had agreed? Why back then, 40 plus years ago, despite the public pronouncements, the public appearance of competition, you know, the space race, you know, it turns out that that is one of an extraordinary chain of lies that we have been told, that we have been fed over the last 40 years. Now, these lies mount up, and what I tried to do, and I'm going to give you some of what I actually showed the press in Washington to give you a feeling for how hard it is to find the one trigger point that will get people who think that NASA is this squeaky clean, you know, can do no wrong agency, to get them to begin to understand the degree of manipulation and outright deception that NASA, you know, undertakes when it serves their arcane purposes. And it turns out, Mike and I have been researching this book now as a book for about 4 years, but we've been researching the topic for something like 10 years. Mike, when did we first meet or talk or whatever?
About 9 years ago.
About 9 years. So it's almost a decade we've been at this, and it took us 5 or 6 years to figure out maybe we should do something, and then it took us 4 years to actually bring it to fruition. So that's one of the reasons I'm really, really heartened that we're on the New York Times bestseller list. Notice I'm going to be saying that a lot today. I mean, and the reason is, it not only really feels good, you know, it not only really is an affirmation that somebody gives a damn besides us, but as I said to George the other night when I was, you know, discussing this on Coast, We're in essence running a political campaign. This is bigger than a book. It's bigger than, talking to a bunch of our friends in a hotel room in Los Angeles. This, in essence, is an alternative political campaign. And our campaign, raison d'etre, the reason we're all here, is we are attempting to take back, as our headline said, to take back the NASA that I once knew, that we were sold, the NASA that was supposed to be representative of all mankind, boldly going and letting us know what they found. When you go through this data and you find how much they have kept hidden from us and how much they have lied to us all these years, it really takes its toll. So this is a campaign, and the numbers on Amazon, and more prestigiously, the numbers in terms of the New York Times, are kind of like a tracking poll. It's kind of like there's a poll out there following us week to week now as to how we're getting through. And it looks like there's an awful lot of people that, even looking at the title of Dark Mission, The Secret History of NASA, are saying, against the backdrop of all the other history that's going on right now, how we were lied into the war, how they're trying to get us into another one, how the price of gas seems to be totally unreflected at the price of oil in terms of barrels, how the lies just keep on coming in all kinds of areas. So what I'm projecting is that when Dark Mission kind of hit the airwaves and hit public attention, people said, oh, well, of course they'd be lying about that too. Except the difference is they almost know nothing about NASA. And they think they know a lot about these other areas because these other areas are being covered every night on the NBC nightly news. So I'm projecting that that's one reason why we have absolutely zoomed to the top of the charts, because people are thirsty. They really want to know what NASA has been hiding. And you better believe that they've been hiding an amazing amount of information. So with that as prelude, what I showed the press was that this all really began 50 years ago, a half century, with the ostensible beginnings of the space race. It had an extraordinary high point in 1969 on July 20th, and Mike in his presentation in a few minutes will describe in exquisite detail why that date is in fact part of the lie. It was not chosen by accident. It is intricately part of this extraordinarily careful, multi-level planning that has nothing to do with science or engineering or spacecraft or when you can reach places like the moon. It has everything to do with hidden arcane rituals, religious rituals taking place in the heart of the most scientific Western 21st century agency one can possibly imagine, if of course you read the press releases. If you don't read the press releases, our information will go down a little bit easier, because we're going to show you the real NASA, the NASA that you never knew, the NASA that is contained in that almost 600-page book. So one high point from the beginning of the space race was our landing on the moon. Another was, of course, this. This has been really not a high point, but a low point, as you're going to see as we go through the afternoon. Because instead of going and utilizing the moon, following up on the Apollo program, going boldly as the vision had been to colonize the moon, then move on to the rest of the solar system as part of the pre-NASA dream, we have been stuck with basically this place for the last several decades, all because of this institution and the hidden geopolitics going on behind the scenes.